I'm Euell Gibbons. I'm gathering part of my breakfast. These are high bush cranberries, delicious with grape nuts and hot milk. As an author of 5 books on natural food, I can recommend Post Grape Nuts. This crunchy cereal is made from natural ingredients, wholesome wheat and barley, and it's fortified with vitamins. Its naturally sweet taste reminds me of wild hickory nuts. I call Grape Nuts my back-to-nature cereal.
These are high bush cranberries. Sorry.
Down number 5.
These are high bush cranberries. No good.
Down 15.
These are wild Oh, for gosh sake.
Many of the commercials you see on television begin life here on the island of Manhattan, the creative product of thousands of people at the more than 200 advertising agencies head in New York City. We're going to visit one of those agencies whose offices are on the top 8 floors of this building for a behind-the-scenes look at how an advertising agency's copywriters, art directors, and producers make a television commercial.
That's a pretty strong
Morning, George.
if we work it. Hi, Kenny.
Well, I have you all together. I have a new creative work requisition out on Grape Nuts.
What kind of a due date do we have on this, Kenny?
We have 10 working days.
I think that's a fair amount of time.
I think so.
Yeah, the strategy attached here?
Right, sure is.
Right.
I'll keep in touch.
Right, Kenny. Oh, this is the strategy that the account team briefed us on just recently. It's a new one, and I think it gives us a chance to do something that's really fresh and original in the cereal category.
Really, George, we've been thinking about this ever since our visit to the factory at Battle Creek.
I was going to say, one of the things that was pretty interesting about our trip was that we found out that Grape Nuts is actually baked like bread. It's made from natural ingredients, and based on that, I think we can come up with some pretty interesting executions. We have, as Milford said, some pretty solid ideas already.
Well, it sounds like you're off to a good start.
Yep. Okay.
We're ready.
So let's get to it.
Yep.
First big job of the copywriter art director team, to come up with an idea, a way of talking to people about Grape Nuts that's informative, interesting, and different.
Just had a thought. You mentioned bake like bread. One thing we could do is a baker, you know, like that natural food expert talking about grape.
Terrific. Even if you took the thing back a couple steps and used the wheat farmer, who is certainly an expert on natural foods, he would be a terrific spokesman.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Isn't there a man in this book that we were looking at the other day?
His name's Euell Gibbons. He's studied natural foods all his life, and he's written several books on the subject. I think it'd be very good.
I think he mentioned in this article cranberries, didn't he?
Yeah.
Perhaps we could base our commercial on something like that, wild cranberries.
That should be.
What if we had, say, a scene in the snow, and he says something like, well, I'm gathering part of my breakfast, and you don't see anything but snow until you get to a close-up of the cranberry.
That could be good.
And then we could go to an inside scene where he's putting the cranberries on the grape nuts. We're going to have him starting out in the snow picking wild cranberries, if you can believe that.
Wild
That's
cranberries
really
in
a
the
weird
snow?
scene, yeah.
Once they have the idea, the art director and assistant lay out a storyboard.
How do you see it?
How about if we have him up in the mountains?
Yeah, sort of a western type of setting.
A few trees standing here in the foreground.
When do you think you'd be able to have all of this together, have this board together?
Tomorrow, say 4.
Well, can we get it a little quicker than that? We're kind of in a hurry for it.
3:30?
Okay.
The storyboard is a blueprint of the commercial, showing key scenes in a series of still pictures.
I call Grape Nuts my back-to-nature cereal. And of course, we
Next hurdle, selling the idea to B&B's top creative man.
Do you think that a lot of people will know who Euell Gibbons is?
We think that a lot of people will. He's written several books and sold over 500,000 copies. This is one of them, Stalking the Good Life, and he's appeared on talk shows and written articles for national publications.
I think that using him for Grape Nuts is a very good thing because I think he's a natural spokesman for the brand. It's a good relationship between product and the man. So I think this is good. I would consider using the books as premiums too for the product eventually because I think there exists this natural affinity. So I'd say this is a very good idea. I think the client will like it very much.
That everything is completely covered with snow.
After the creative okay, the account group is taken through the storyboard, frame by frame, and they put their stamp of approval on it. Next, the client presentation. Account and creatives show the commercial for the first time to the post-Grape Nuts brand manager.
I like the idea. Do we, or have we talked to Gibbons yet? Do we know if he can be available?
Yes, casting has looked into that, and I think we're in pretty good shape. Ruthie, what did you find out?
Yes, we have talked to him, and he is available. He told me a little story during one of our conversations that when he was growing up, his mother had 2 cereals in the house, and she always used to serve the cornflakes in the big bowl and the Grape Nuts in the small bowl. And he was always trying to figure out how he could get her to put the Grape Nuts in the big bowl.
Seems like a good idea. Let's go produce it.
Okay.
With a commercial approved for production, a lot of things begin to happen.
Yeah, this is fine.
The commercial gets an eagle eye from the agency's lawyer.
Paul, you probably have, should have anyway, an affidavit, testimonial affidavit. And
Yes.
Production technique clearance form and your network clearance form.
I have all 3, Phil. And this affidavit, as you can tell, also states by Gibbons that the statements made by him in the commercial are truthful, and it's notarized.
Good, you're all set. Have a good shoot.
I just hope we can find some snow at this time of year.
I'm sure you will.
The manager of production and the producer prepare the budget.
Okay, Paul, we figured it 2 ways. One for Michigan and one for Colorado.
Right.
If you don't have this in Michigan, it'll cost you a few bucks more in Colorado. All right?
Okay.
Now, who would you like to bid?
Well, Gary Milford and I have narrowed it down to 3 houses. Audio Productions.
Audio.
MPO.
MPO.
And George Gage Productions.
George Gage.
Okay?
Okay.
That's one of the exciting things, I think, about this production.
George Gage Productions is low bidder and gets the job. And in the pre-production meeting, director George Gage tells how he sees the commercial.
White snow out, barren trees, and everything else. You'll know that he's right out there in the environment.
Everybody who has anything to do with the commercial is there. Every last detail is ironed out.
More of the environment. And then the entire scene is a slow move into the cranberries where he finally ends up with the cranberries close to his hand.
It's obvious that that'll do it. I mean, that'll help set up the whole business about being barren and so forth.
What about John Foods attorneys, Rupert?
There's the commercial.
The commercial has been
gone through the Consumer Claims Review Board, so we're ready to go.
We intend to have an early crew call. It's going to be like at sunrise.
Right.
It could be just a beautiful, gorgeous sunrise against that white snow. Still, Gary, being stark looking. All I'm saying is we're going to go with the weather, except for rain.
Except for rain.
Would you pass me that cranberry sprig, please?
Of course.
You could move
Next step in stalking the wild cranberry. 2,100 miles west of New York in the high snow country of Colorado, where the 15-man film crew has moved in for a 2-day shoot.
Not far. 12.
I'm Euell Gibbons.
The opening scene with Euell Gibbons runs 6 seconds in the commercial.
These are wild highbush cut.
Down 7.
The director finally thinks he's got it after 4 hours and 22 different takes.
I'm Euell Gibbons. I'm gathering part of my breakfast. These are high bush cranberries.
Good. Hey. Good.
About noon, the action and our star move to the next setup, a small log cabin almost buried in 8 feet of snow.
I want agreement from you guys before I do it, because once we do it, you want to sit down comfortably, please?
George, step to your left. No, I want to put the berries go in the bowl before I reach for the milk.
They have to go in after the cereals.
Right, we've discussed that. It's got to be the Grape Nuts first, then the berries, then the milk. Shit, guys, you can't talk while he's doing the place. Let's look at it once, and then its naturally sweet taste is when you'll be actually tasting it. So I can get one bite in, maybe. Its naturally sweet taste bite reminds me of wild hickory nuts.
Its naturally sweet taste reminds me of wild hickory nuts. I call post-grape nuts my back to nature cereal.
Now, to me, logically, that's the way it works. And here he is in the cabin. He's got the box in his hand. He's got the cranberries.
Making a commercial is hard, exacting work. But at the end of the day, there's usually time for a little relaxation.
Let's have some fun. Let me do a song I just composed in your honor. It's called the Cranberry Rag.
Cranberry like that.
Where were you born?
I was born in Texas, the state where George Washington was born.
I don't believe it.
Yeah, George Washington was born in Texas, and when he was 8 years old, his father gave him a machete for his birthday present, and he went out and cut down his father's mesquite tree. His father came roaring into the house and said, "Who cut down my mesquite tree?" And George said, "It was I, Father. I cannot tell a lie." He said, "Well, if you can't tell a lie, well, then you have no future in Texas," so they moved to Virginia.
You always exaggerate a little bit. Let me show you this interior sequence I cut together.
As an author of 5 books...
Back in New York, with 3,000 feet of exposed film, the creative team and the film editor go to work over the moviola.
It's that scene, Dick, we've been talking about. There's a shot here, am I correct, Gary, where you can see more of the grape nuts and more of the berries?
Yeah, I think we do have an alternate take.
Yeah,
This is really where a commercial happens. Selecting and splicing together exactly the right scenes. Boiling 30 minutes of film down to 30 seconds.
Much better. Much better. Gary, I think that's the one we're talking about, isn't it?
Very good, yeah.
Dick, that's it. Will that fit in time?
Yeah, let me cut it in.
Grape nut interlock, ready to roll.
After a week of editing,
Roll it, Ollie.
the moment everybody's been waiting for, the rough interlock.
I'm Euell Gibbons.
The creative group gathers in the darkened screening room for a first look at the commercial in its proper sequence. This is the moment of truth in the making of a commercial.
I call Grape Nuts my back to nature cereal.
You know, I think that really works out fine, you know. He comes off very nicely. There's one thing. Do you have another take, a closer shot on the opening of the bush itself, the cranberry bush? Because I'm so intrigued by the thing that I want to see more of it. You know, it's very interesting to me.
Paul, I think we do, don't we?
Now, we had about 20 takes, and I think there's a zoom version that comes in closer and stays on it for a longer period of time, and perhaps, what do you think, fellas?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it might be more
I
effective.
think you ought to try it. I think it would improve it, but generally I think it's a fine spot, really. It came out very nicely.
Thanks, Al. Thank you.
After a little re-editing, the commercial is approved by the client and goes to the optical lab for an answer print. Finally, an idea that began life in an art director's office more than 2 months before is transformed by a small army of specialists and a long chain of events into a television commercial.
Cranberry.
Cut.
Here is the completed commercial.
I'm Euell Gibbons. I'm gathering part of my breakfast. These are high bush cranberries, delicious with grape nuts and hot milk. As an author of 5 books on natural foods, I can recommend post-grape nuts. This crunchy cereal is made from natural ingredients, wholesome wheat and barley, and it's fortified with vitamins. Its naturally sweet taste reminds me of wild hickory nuts. I call grape nuts my back to nature cereal. The high bush cranberry is red above the snow, the sharpest, brightest flavor that I know. A hint of bitter harmonized with sour. And for this treat, I ask you spare the flower that decorates the woods in early spring. If you can learn to give each living thing your loving reverence, you will be able to dine with me at Mother Nature's table. We'll laugh at all the winter winds that blow when high bush cranberries hang above the snow.